tomorrow being May Day, 1st of May, is perhaps a really important day in the New Zealand health system for the actions that senior doctors are taking, which are, I don't know if it's unheard of, but it's certainly incredibly rare to have like a 24-hour strike. And Dr. Gary Payinda is obviously going to be involved with it. We're going to bring Gary in now. He's going to talk to us a bit about what the strike's all about, and then we'll actually get Gary back tomorrow night to tell us about how the day went with that strike. Cool. So let's welcome to the show right now, Dr. Gary Payinda. Hey man, how you doing?
Hey guys, how's it?
Yeah, going very well. Yeah, like you and I talked about having a bit of a touch base tonight. We don't have to like zip through this quickly. We can take as long as we want on the conversation, but I thought it would be good to kind of set up the scene before the strike, which starts in 3 hours technically. Because last night there was people who were putting messages on in our chats telling us about events that were happening tomorrow, and we kind of thought, well, let's let the punters watching now continue that, so people tell us about where things are going, and let's talk to someone who's involved with it to find out a bit more about what we can expect. So why don't we just start with reminding us all why our senior doctors and others now, I think some nurses have joined in, striking tomorrow.
We're striking essentially because when one contract ends, you negotiate for the next one. And you try to negotiate decent salaries. You try to negotiate decent, essentially the working conditions you're under. And you may have heard there's some problems in healthcare over the past 18 months or so. Well, there have been problems for a long time, but fuel has been put on the fire, and the problems have accelerated quite unsustainably. And so during these contract negotiations, our union, the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists, which for regular folks just means salaried public hospital doctors, right? Okay. This has nothing to do with people who work out in private. This is only essentially, and it doesn't have anything directly to do with primary care and GPs, although realistically we're all tied together by the same common problems. But this strike is for the public hospital doctors to say, hey, there are problems with staffing. There are problems with nurse staffing, with doctor staffing. So among the doctor thing is that on average, 1 in 6 New Zealand doctors is missing in the public system. And they're not lost, they're just not hired. And it means that if the average is 16, you have to understand that some departments and some hospitals, the doctors are working with 40% understaffing in their department. And I don't know, like if you need to service a certain number of patients or do a certain number of surgeries or endoscopies or treat a certain number of emergency patients, and you're 20, 30, 40% down, you need that problem fixed. There's no magical way around this. The problem needs to be fixed. And
hey Gary, a question. How do you fix it? Like, I mean, you can't magic up 5,000 doctors tomorrow, but so like question, how do you fix that shortfall?
So where do you think these doctors are, Pat? I'll give you one guess, and it's far west of these islands.
Yeah.
Right. For years, doctors have been able to get certified and registered in Australia and fly over there. With a 4-hour flight, you've got 40% better pay. But let's not focus on just the pay, although that is pretty important for many people. It's also working conditions. When you have enough junior doctors, enough trainees in the scheme, it makes a huge difference. When you have enough nurses hired, it makes an immeasurable difference to the practice of medicine when the things that need doing for patients actually get done rather than neglected. So there's a host of working conditions that need to be better. You're saying, where do we magic up these doctors? Pat, if we didn't hemorrhage doctors and nurses so badly, we wouldn't need to magic them up. If the pay is not competitive, if the working conditions are sometimes atrocious and frequently understaffed, it's no big mystery as to what needs to be fixed. If you make the job attractive for people, they will stay. You will get all of those doctors back from Australia. You know, I'll just give nurses as a good example because I spend a lot of time with them. The young ones are escaping to Australia because they do not see hope in a system where at their last, so there's some fascinating things going on. They had a pay equity that probably took the better part of a decade to get sorted, right? We have Holidays Act pay that is just getting sorted now, that dates back, I don't know, something like 10 years. You've got, again, understaffing and just a lot of pressure, obviously, both inflicted from our own need to want to do a good job by patients and also from management from above, to work harder and faster with less and less resource. Less and less resource relative to the need and the demand. So the young nurses are leaving for Australia because they say, why would I put up with this when I have a better alternative and I can make 20-30% more for an easier, better staffed job? But then the older ones are saying, why am I putting up with this anymore? I was going to work for another 5 years, but it's just not worth it now. So yeah, there's been a lot of turnover, and and obviously burnout is quite endemic. We've been talking about burnout for ages, but the reality is, you push people only so hard for so long. Like, there's only so many additional shifts that anyone wants to do. You're already working whatever you're rostered to work. And then you're getting texts literally every couple of days begging you to come in. And of course you can say no. And this is to cover vacancies, staff absences, sicknesses, just roster gaps in the schedule. And you can say no, but you know that when you say no, the person who's stuck there tonight is screwed. They're going to have a really bad night. Your colleagues remaining will have a bad night. The patients there will have longer waits. That's not anything that we want to see. So getting back to your question, why do we strike? For all those reasons. What is the answer? Stop pushing people away. So right now, you've a perfect example. One more little reason of where doctors are going. What do you think happens when you tell doctors that you're putting tens of millions of dollars into 10,579 surgical cases being done in private? So you're outsourcing these to private. Now, the public doctors, some of them, not all, but some of them have said, we can do some of those on extra shifts on Saturday lists to get cranked through. Government wouldn't come up with the money to hire the nurses to run the extra theaters on the weekend, but they're happy to outsource tens of millions of dollars. When you know that, as I've told you before on the show, the outsourced cases are not the sickest, most needy, most desperately long waiting patients. Yeah. They are the cream skimmed off the top. The cherry picking that goes on is real, because they're only going to take the cleanest, most profitable, and simplest cases. Yeah. And when you offer these doctors and nurses and anesthetists the opportunity to go in private, make more money doing easier cases, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to go where the money is and where they're needed, and they're not going to come back. So when you pull people out into the private sector, it's not like if a surgeon ends up doing 40 cases this year in private, it's not like they're just going to up sticks and just come back to doing more public. It's often, for many, a one-way path. And the really tragedy is that we've got young doctors who are amazingly good, I'm just thinking of some surgical specialists at the minute, who have left practice in the public system to go out to private. So we're incentivizing the destruction and the collapse of the public health sector, and the outsourcing of health. And I don't think it's accidental. I think there's a real push to privatize things because, it's very profitable. As I've told you before, if you want to invest in something good, buy yourself a surgical center, a private radiology group. Yeah. You guys are killing it on the show, aren't you?
Yeah, man. Something like that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, patrons. We'll get into that business next. It'll be our side hustle. Hey, question actually as well is, you're talking about the solutions, right? If you could wave your magic wand and get all the funding needed to make those things happen, I mean, do you have any idea how long would it take to get the health system kind of back to where it should be with those extra doctors and nurses? Is it like another decade plan to catch up again?
No, I think it would be less than a decade. So to train a doctor de novo, from the time you graduate high school, let's say at 18, till you're about 32 years old, that's how long it takes to train a specialist.
Yeah.
And so, it's a bit unrealistic to think you're going to like start a new med school and start training people and blah, blah, blah. And then, in 14 years, be able to reap the benefit of that. It's much wiser to ask yourself why we are losing so many doctors that were already trained and we're already here and working here. Kiwi doctors, immigrant doctors, whatever, you name it. Why aren't they staying? Why are they going to Australia or into private? That could be fixed. I'm not going to say tomorrow. I don't want to exaggerate that much, but that could be fixed within a year.
Yeah, the legislation could be passed to fix that problem immediately. Yeah, there might be another tail of putting it in place, but they could make a legislative change.
You could drive people back into or entice people back into the public sector. Look, David Bailey, an obstetrician gynecologist from Whangarei Hospital, said that he was able to do Saturday lists with some of his colleagues to catch up on women who've been waiting, some of whom have been waiting for over a year for pelvic surgery, just typically with pain and bleeding. And he was given the runaround, and the decision was made instead to outsource those. And that could be turned around tomorrow. That is a volitional thing. That is a choice. It's a choice someone's making. And you said, if I could wave a magic wand, I don't need to wave a magic wand. I could just ask that the $3 billion in tax cuts for property investors, I won't even be so aggressive as to say reverse it. Just reverse it for the people that have 10 or more rental properties, and just funnel that money back where it ought to be, into essential public services. And, if you did that, you could correct the entire GP and hospital specialist shortage, and all the nurse shortage immediately. If you reverse that 2.9 billion that was given to landlords, you could reverse all the doctor and nurse shortages and pay for free public dental care for the whole country. That's how much money $2.9 billion is. Like, we talk about 16 billion as a, the finance minister said she's going to cut another billion from the budget. These are enormous numbers. And I did want to say one thing about the strike that I forgot to say a few minutes ago, is that there's the most amazing line in it. I think it's one of like the three demands, and one is like better pay or better working hours or whatever, but the third demand is just brilliant. I'm really proud of the people, whoever the leadership group is that is like drafting these things. They just said one of our requests is that for every % that we are understaffed, that the remaining doctors on that shift get that percentage. So if you're doing the work currently, like in the country, we're down, I think, an average of I believe it's 16%. So you would get 1.16 because you're doing the work of 1.16 doctors, or 1.4 if you're really in a horribly understaffed situation, like some of my psychiatry colleagues around the country are. Basically, it's brilliant. It just says, let there actually be some financial recognition that we are are expected to do the work of more than one human. Like, that's just the reality of it, is that you expand to fill the gap. And it's real. When you hear, again, this is a separate thing, but like GPs putting in a couple of hours after their shift, doing their paperwork and their other stuff, it's real. When you hear doctors like in my system, in the hospital specialist system, doing the work to cover their own job and someone else's or part of someone else's, it's real. So this is the first time I've ever seen that in a contract. And I think it's incredible. Now, of course, like, is this going to happen? Are we going to win? It's, who knows? Probably not. Probably it'll all fall on deaf ears and we'll be crushed. But at least we are trying. And this idea is wonderful because money is not the be all end all for me. I would not be in New Zealand if money was the most important thing. But the understaffing issues for me are really important. And even more than the doctor understaffing, for me, it's the nurse understaffing that means I can't get the care for my patients that I want. It's not nice to have people in a waiting room for 4 hours. You're unable to see them because you've got 30 patients in the ED. The waiting room is full with another 30 patients, and bad things are happening out there when patients, elderly patients with abdominal pain and chest pain, are waiting for hours. And that's not always. I don't want to exaggerate, but it's frequent enough. Like, if you just look at the numbers for how often your local ED is in code red, they got rid of the code black because I think it looked quite bad for them to admit that there was really a sort of a life-threatening, a health-threatening problem. But now we're in code red, which is the highest level, rather frequently, and it's not good. So yeah, I love this idea of one of the demands just being, hey, staff the place adequately. That's what it's what I really want. I can't speak for everyone. I'm sure there are people that are really focused on the money most of all. I would like to come and have a place that just works, where I can just do my job, do the thing I was trained to do and the thing I enjoy doing, which is emergency medicine. So yeah, that's the gist on the strike.
I'm interested. I have a question for you, which is kind of prompted from what you're saying, because you seem to be a fighter. You seem to be someone that was going to, butt up against various organizations to make it better for you and your colleagues and for patients of this country. Do you ever get to a point where you go, I can't do this anymore?
A few years ago, I think I would say yes. So doing the job full time became untenable for me and for the majority of my colleagues. So if you look at, so ED is a stressful place, right? It has unsociable hours, nights, weekends, holidays, irregular hours that mess up your body clock, and then demands that can either be really chill or the opposite of very chill, kind of horrendous at times, but always extremely worthwhile and highly worthwhile and motivating. But I realized that, especially when I had been on the district health board for a few years and wasn't able to make the kind of change that we needed to have, I just got so frustrated that I had to step away and reduce my hours. And that was the best thing in the world for me, to cut down my hours. And subsequent to that, virtually everyone in my department has reduced their hours from full-time. I'm trying to think of percentages. Let's say 70%, I'm going to guesstimate, have less than full hours. And so that means that they have less than full pay, right? Because your pay goes down significantly when you cut down your hours. Yeah. And it also means that in my remaining hours, like, I still have to do the same number of unsociable hours as a full-timer would, or the same, how do I say this right? I have to do the same amount of call, like overnight call. So reducing your hours doesn't get you out of that. It just means that a higher proportion of shifts are really crummy ones. But I was happy to take that trade-off. Less money, I don't care. A higher proportion of night shifts, I don't care. I need to not be frustrated by the way things are not changing. And so that was good for me to cut back, because then I could do other things that I found value in. So I do some assisted dying work that is incredibly enriching, to be able to sit in a home with someone for a couple of hours and talk to them about the end of their life, their terminal illness, and to talk with their family. So that's been incredible. But and I still do medical direction work for a national organization and a bunch of other stuff that's medical. But reducing my hours has allowed me to preserve my mental health and reduce my frustration. But I need to speak up, because if I saw this stuff and didn't say anything, I would just feel worse. So
Yeah, right.
I've been willing to take whatever risks of censure or worse, because the alternative of just sort of sitting silently as you watch things get worse is not acceptable to me.
Chewie, we're going to wrap up now, but I know you've just been sitting there taking it all in. We haven't even got to some of Gary's fantastic signs that are going to be on the protest tomorrow. I like this one. One Simeon Brown costs nearly as much as 2 new public surgeons. Which one helps society more? Some good ones. Hungry kids, sick patients, up surgery denials, up doctors' wait lists, is stupid, wasteful, and cruel politics. They're all pretty good. Primary care needed 14%, government gave 4%, and said just bill patients more. Also, Gary, there are lots of people commenting on your TikTok saying it's good to see you doing more stuff independently, sort of thing as well. But if people want to check that out, it's just Gary Payinda. Yep, Dr. Gary Payinda on TikTok. Before we head off, Chewie, you got anything you want? I know you've got a sister who works in the health system. Anything else you want to share before we let Gary go?
Yeah, my sister's a nurse down here in Otago, and it's things that she has mentioned for years now being an issue, and it's just becoming more and more and more of an issue. I've mentioned a couple of times here on the show of her receiving instruction that she needs to take some time off because her leave is too high, and then she goes, "Oh, okay, I'll take some time off." No, leave denied. We can't spare you. And it's just I can't imagine what it's like working in something so dysfunctional. I mean, as you said, I don't think people get into this for lack of a career, for fame and glory. They get into it for deep, like a bone deep care for people.
Yeah.
And to be sitting there going, if I pull the pin on this, I'm letting people down. That's why they put up with it.
And in all of this, the nurses have it worse than the doctors, and the patients have it the worst of all. So the nurses, everything you said is absolutely right. The nurses were offered I think it might have been a slightly less than 1% to 1% pay rise this cycle of contract negotiations. And they said, but inflation is running 2.5% right now. We're going to get 1%. We're going to be moving backwards by 1.5%. And yet the job is getting harder, and there's a hiring freeze on, and I'm having to do the work of more nurses. Like this is wild. The doctors were offered a package that averaged 0.77% pay rise. That's less than 1% compared to inflation running at 2.5%. It's just silliness. So you will definitely see people trying to gravitate out towards other things. But I mean, you have to realize that things are tough for people in general in the rest of the professions and the rest of careers. So yeah, I'll just say one last thing. It wouldn't be so bad to have like austerity or funding problems or leaking walls, part of a ceiling caving in with the heavy rainfalls last week was interesting. All those things can be accepted. Like I didn't come here, for just pure fun and enjoyment and tons of money. I haven't stayed here for 18 years for that. But when you're told that, like, for example, IT is a huge priority, says government, we're going to fix IT. disestablished or moved along or fired. I just read this today. Around 1,500 IT roles, and so like 500 are disestablished, 500 are pushed elsewhere, 500 convinced to leave early. It's really amazing hypocrisy, and I think that's actually the bit that I find the most galling. Like, I do not mind tough circumstances, right? I have worked in very austere environments, but I just want honesty. I just want to be told, like, the straight up deal. I don't want to be told that doctors are Muppets that need to be put back in their box, right? That was David Seymour. Or that we're using patients as pawns, and we get paid so much, and our leave is so high. This coming from a guy who, as that sign said, makes 1.67 times more than a brand new surgeon graduating at the same age. So Simeon's been out of uni for probably a decade now, right? I think he's 34 years old. A specialist is just finishing training at 32, and they're coming out with almost half as much income as one Simeon Brown. And so I would just put it out there to the public, if you could get 1.67 surgeons or one Simeon Brown, which would you pick?
Yeah. Rhetorical question of the night goes to Dr. Gary Payinda. Also, Gary, there are several people in the chat saying your handwriting is surprisingly legible on your signs for a doctor. so that's good as well. Well done. Or did you not do it? Did you get someone else to do the handwriting?
I had some help for some of it. Yeah.
We look forward to hearing from you tomorrow night. And if you've got any, I think we've talked about if you've got any footage or anything like that you want to send through early, and we can sure. get some stuff out there as well. Best of luck for tomorrow. Do you know? I mean, like you're in Whangarei area. Tell people in that area where they need to go, because we've been hearing from people who want to go along and support the doctors and now nurses as well. What are the actions that you know about?
So the doctors are striking tomorrow. That's one thing, starting at midnight, actually tonight, for 24 hours, which is the first time ever. I think it's maybe only the second time that the salaried doctors, public hospital doctors have striked. It's very unpleasant. But there will also be a PSA rally. And so pretty much outside every public hospital, your public hospital doctors should be protesting, rallying, holding up some signs. So that'll probably happen 11 noon in almost any town where there's a decent sized public hospital. So keep an eye out for that. But then we're actually going to walk down to the Public Service Association, the PSA, which is the biggest union in the country, 95,000 members. And they're putting on a national thing called Fight Back Together, Maranga Ake, which is on the 1st of May, right? May Day. That's apparently International Workers' Day. And so all around the country, so the thing that's canceled, I think, is, if I am not mistaken, I think it's only the one in Wellington due to atrocious weather predicted. I don't want people to think it's all canceled. Every place else will be doing it. And so we're going to walk it in my town, Whangarei, from the hospital down to the Eyesight Tourist Center on SH1 in Tarewa Park. It's close by the hospital. And we're going to bring our signs and rally. And we're getting nurses, allied health colleagues, sonographers, families, whānau, patients, whoever wants to come join us from the public is welcome to. And it's not just the doctors. It's going to be all of the public service workers. So the PSA is doing this to raise the profile of austerity impacting our public services, whether, that's teachers, healthcare assistants, nurses, all of it, police, service workers of all kinds, cleaners. They're all under threat by a government that's really done some pretty bad things for workers' rights in general, getting rid of fair pay agreements and making collective bargaining a lot harder. So yeah, this rally will be very broad. And I actually hope and think that it could be the start of a very widespread and active movement to say, enough, you've cut this to the bone. There's no, it's too much. Of course, we just had an announcement 2 nights ago that you guys profiled from Nicola Willis, finance minister, saying that they're going to cut 1.1 billion or more from the budget. Additionally, to all they took 1.4 billion out of healthcare. I don't know how much more you can cut it, but yeah, when you fired 25% of the public health service and 50% of the data and IT department, like what is left to cut? Like the last 3 guys that are trying to prevent hacking. Like I don't understand it. It's nonsensical. It's very wanton and poorly planned out. But it is what it is. They're going to strip off another 1.1 billion. So I'm sure I'll be back here, and what's going on now will seem like a happy memory, the good old days. I'm going to say, remember the good old days, Pat?
Yeah.
Remember Chewie, when it was only a 4.5 hour wait for me to see you?
Yeah, those were the days.
We had it so good. Yeah, those were the days.
Those were the days. Hey, Gary, thanks for your time tonight. And we will catch you 9 o'clock tomorrow night and go over everything you saw and what's been achieved, and probably take some reports from around the country as well.
Yep, sounds great. All right, see you guys. Thank you.
Be well. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Mate.
So you brought that up, Chewie?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a list of the events. The big update is, of course, the Wellington one is cancelled. They're going to get hit by some pretty rough
7
weather.
meter swells in the Cook Strait. They're saying 7 meter.
But look, this is important. Not just for the doctors' strike, which again is unprecedented. That doctors, usually, because they know how vital that they are, if they do a strike, it's for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
It's rolling strike action. It's just, that sort of thing. This is unprecedented. That is the depth of feeling that they have, that they're standing up for their patients. Now, Simeon Brown wants us to think that they're using their patients somehow as human shields to pad their bank accounts. And we all know that that's bullshit, because you have a choice of who to trust here: doctors or Simeon Brown. Which I'm baffled. Which one do I trust? Do I trust the finance minister that tells us that there just isn't any money on the money tree? We just have to cut. And don't worry, it's not going to affect the front line. It's not going to affect the front line. It's only going to affect the backroom boys, like the people that do the IT services to make sure that your personal information isn't hacked by bad actors, or the ones that maybe remember that you have surgery, rather than, I assume, the new system, which is to write it down on a Post-it note and stick it to a wall somewhere. Hopefully that'll work. Very, very cheap.
I think I talked about this before. I watched a television program called New Amsterdam. It's about a public hospital in New York. And the episode we watched last, series season 4 or whatever, there was a hack. And I actually was like, oh, okay. And
it's happened before.
The outside hacker got in and basically shut everything down, and people got surgery stopped and A&E stopped, and it all stopped because hackers got in the system. I know it's not real life. The story is not real life, but it has happened before. Yeah, so
it's not CSI or anything like that. This has happened. People have got into DHB IT infrastructure and shut things down.
Yeah,
have locked records. Like, this isn't pie in the sky stuff. It's planning.
Yeah.
It's just as important as making sure the hospital roof doesn't fall in when you're getting your guts pulled out.
Oh, you thinking about Dunedin again? Has Dunedin just popped up into your mind for some reason?
Oh, it's apropos of nothing. It doesn't even have to be Dunedin Hospital. It could be like any one of a half dozen New Zealand hospitals that are in that space. Because back in the day, remember when we think about all these great things of like getting New Zealand back on track and all of that sort of stuff? When we decided, hey, we need to build some world-leading hospitals, we're going to do it all at once. We're just going to go on a spree of building hospitals from the top of the country down to the bottom because we fucking need to, and we're thinking decades ahead of ourselves.
Well,
guess what? That bill was due in the 2000s.
I'm not sure who we were talking to. I'm not sure whether it was Gary or maybe Aisha Verrill. Or, I can't remember who, to be fair, but the point was made that the number of the increase in population over the last 5 years requires a new hospital. Not a refurbished or a new hospital replacing the old, but requires a new hospital. So, for example, we all know Dunedin's hospital is getting rebuilt. What they're saying is it would need 2 hospitals in Dunedin, or wherever it is. So a whole brand new, never seen before hospital with the population growth of the last 5 years, and we're struggling to get our current hospitals up to code, and we should have at least one more based on the last 5 years.